Jensen Huang unveils the new Vera Rubin chip, exciting the AI world. Mickey Rourke is crowdfunding just to pay rent. And apparently, the United Nations, NATO, and the post World War II order has come to an end. All that and more today on Filtered. Hi, and welcome to the show. I'm TJ Walker, your host here on Filtered. It's great to be back. Was traveling on holidays and tried to do a live show yesterday, but plane delays did not make it back in time. So apologies for that, but it did give you some best of. I hope you enjoyed that as well. Let's dive right into the top story of the day. NVIDIA. So NVIDIA is about to reset the AI arms race at CES. That's the Consumer Electronics Show. That's the big deal in Las Vegas every year. Jensen Huang unveiled the Vera Rubin chip. Now, the significance of this, it's promising to dramatically lower cost and energy use while expanding NVIDIA's reach beyond data centers into self-driving cars. If the chip delivers, it could slow the explosive energy demands of AI. That would be a good thing because, wow, is it sucking up energy all over the world. And it would appear to make NVIDIA's dominance even stronger. So let's look at some more of the facts. This took 3 years to develop. It uses apparently 1/4 of the chips versus the Blackwell chip, and that was before the best they had. Inference costs dropped to 1/10. Chips sell for roughly $30,000 each. It has a 75% profit margin per chip. And that's astronomical. I don't care what business you're in. When you're getting 75% profit margins, you are doing something right from your own standpoint. From the standpoint of regulators and monopoly, maybe not so much. But wow, that is extraordinarily healthy profit margin, which is why this is, in fact, the most highly valued company in the entire world. Its Q4 profit, $31.9 billion. Profits are up 65% over year. Its expected 2026 sales, $500 billion. Let's turn now and look at a clip of Jensen's speech. I want us to look at not just his substance, but his style. That's part of what we do here at Filtered. We look at the top news story of the day. We filter them through the lens of truth, what's important to you, but also through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills. So let's take a look right now. He's definitely a confident and experienced public speaker now, running out to the stage, showing energy, showing excitement, smiling, waving. He's not just sort of plodding, slowly walking, hunched over, holding a bunch of papers for a speech the way some executives do.
Hello, Las Vegas! Happy New Year!
High energy in the voice, sounding almost like a rock star at the beginning of a concert.
Welcome to...
Okay, I do have to share something with you that jumped out at me. He's long been known for his signature leather motorcycle jacket. I looked at this at the beginning and I thought, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Because this does not look like his signature motorcycle look. In fact, it's a brand new jacket. It's apparently lizard skin, retailing for $9,000. I got to tell you, I didn't like this. It just seemed kind of bizarre. Now, Kara Swisher, the well-known podcaster, famed tech reporter, says she likes him because she reminds her of a really friendly lesbian with his look. Again, these are her words, and she's a famed and respected journalist and a lesbian herself, publicly out. She's saying Jensen Huang reminds her of a very friendly, warm, cuddly lesbian. She wasn't talking about this look, this normal look. This shiny lizard skin seems to be taking things in even a bigger direction. Now, I'm all in favor of people developing a signature look. It certainly worked for Steve Jobs with his mock turtleneck, his jeans, simplicity, consistency. He didn't have to think about it. You knew it when you saw it. And by all accounts, Jensen Huang has essentially modeled himself after Steve Jobs by having a signature look. But this is altering the signature look. I mean, it's just so shiny. I didn't like it, but let's see what else he's doing in the beginning of his speech.
CES. Well, we have about 15 keynotes worth of material to pack in here. I'm so
He definitely is someone who comes across as competent. I mean, there's thousands in the audience, millions watching it at some point, and he in no way seems nervous, uncomfortable, or artificial. He's coming across fairly relaxed, comfortable, confident, and in command. His body language is comfortable. He's not hiding behind a lectern.
happy to see all of you. You got 3,000 people in this auditorium. There's 2,000 people in the courtyard watching us. There's another 1,000 people apparently in the fourth floor where there's supposed to be NVIDIA show floors, all watching this keynote. And of course,
Okay, I'm going to go on record saying this is an awful start. Doesn't mean it was a bad speech. He's gotten good press from the speech. He's gotten good messaging about his new product. But this is just not the way you want to start a speech. He's talking about housekeeping matters of how many people are out in the hallway. If you're in the room watching him, why do you care how many people are out in the hallway? You don't. Why do you care how many people are on the fourth floor? You are. So that's more about me, the speaker. Oh, look how important I am. Look at all these people watching me. That is never a good strategy. My advice to every CEO I work with is start off by giving some idea that's interesting and useful to your audience. I don't know why it's useful to anyone in the audience knowing how many people are in the total audience and where they're sitting or standing.
millions around the world are going to be watching this to kick off this new year.
Again, millions of people around the world are going to be watching this. He does not come across as an arrogant person. He doesn't have that reputation, but it does seem like bragging. Millions of people are watching me. Okay, say something interesting for those millions of people rather than talking about the fact that you have such a huge audience.
Well, every 10 to 15 years, the computer industry resets. A new platform.
I like the movement. I like the pacing now. Not just the actual movement pacing, but how the words are coming out of his mouth and his speed. He's not rushing. Even seasoned executives who've given as many speeches as he does, when you're on a stage like that with so many thousands of people, knowing that the potential audience is millions, it's just easy to rush because you're nervous. He does not seem nervous at all.
Platform shift happened from mainframe to PC, PC to internet, internet to cloud, cloud to mobile. Each time, the world of applications target a new platform. That's why it's called a platform shift. You write new applications for a new computer, except this time, there are two simultaneous platform shifts, in fact, happening at the same time. While we now move to AI, applications are now going to be built on top of AI. At first, people thought AIs are applications.
So he's coming across very, very comfortably. He doesn't in any way look canned or overly rehearsed. He's clearly rehearsed. There's no doubt about it. But what I can't tell if he's using prompters on the stage or any other kind of teleprompter. In either way, it's fine because I like the fact that he is giving eye contact around the room. He's moving around the room, and he's not just staring one spot at one prompter, walking 5 feet, staring at another prompter, because some people do that. And they think, wow, I'm fooling everyone. They don't see me holding notes or reading bullet points, but it can be obvious to everyone that someone is sort of just stuck in front of a screen. He's not doing that. So again, I give him high marks in general for his stagecraft, his platform skills. Where I did take marks off was the first moment out of the gate. The first thing you say is a chance to really grab people's attention. Now, when you're the CEO of the most highly valued company in the world, you don't really have to worry about keeping people's attention because so many people have their net worth tied up into you and their businesses are tied up into you. And so many business analysts are staring at you. You're going to capture attention the whole time. And he did put the spotlight on his new chip, and the strengths of that new chip did come out. So I would give all in all this presentation an A-. Doesn't have the final elements I think it takes to be an A+, but he's clearly a skilled communicator. He's clearly someone who emulates the late Steve Jobs, not just in trying to have a signature look, but in making these keynote speeches something special, something to look forward to, making them an event. And so, yes, he is a world-class CEO, obviously a world-class founder. And I think if he continues along this path, he will go down in history as one of the world-class business communicators. U.S. President Donald Trump announces that the U.S. will be essentially running Venezuela for the foreseeable future, whatever that means. The country, according to Trump, isn't ready for elections, and the U.S. will need to nurse the country back to health. So that's the latest. Of course, over the weekend, the United States removed Maduro from Venezuela. Now, Maduro, when he was forced to give a pleading in New York, said he was kidnapped. Now, I'm no fan of this guy. He is, by all accounts, a despot, an authoritarian, someone who has usurped authority and has taken horrible advantage of the people of Venezuela. But yes, he was accurate. Kidnapping. That is exactly how I described the events on Saturday, just hours after it happened. Folks, it doesn't matter if you are a conservative. It doesn't matter if you are a liberal. It doesn't matter if you are a libertarian. This is horrific at so many different levels. It's going to take me a while to walk through them, but let's go through some of the facts here. Again, Trump says Venezuela elections can't happen within the next month or so. U.S. involvement will happen for some time. I mean, there's so many mixed messages here. On the one hand, he says we're running the country. That's not what Marco Rubio says. On the one hand, we were told it was about the drugs, and yet, according to almost every credible independent analyst of that, they're not really sending that many drugs to the United States. They send theirs to Europe. It's also a mixed, muddled message, given the fact that Honduras was seen as a much bigger drug smuggler, and their president was indicted and convicted in the United States. And Trump said, oh, no problem. You can send all the drugs you want, make millions of dollars sending drugs to the United States, but if Biden prosecuted you, by definition, that makes you good because Biden prosecuted me. That's the logic there. So the superior drug lord of the two leaders of nations was given a full pardon by Donald Trump. So it's clearly not about the drugs. So he's gone on and on about how it's about the drugs, and then it's about you weren't properly elected, you took over. Well, clearly Trump loves dictators. I mean, he loves Putin. He seems to get along fairly well with Xi. He certainly loves Middle Eastern potentates. So there's clearly not a problem with a particular leader just overstaying his welcome after an election has gone bad, because Trump himself has endorsed that tactic. So finally he says, yeah, it's about the oil. We want the oil, which is just neocolonialism. That's all it is. That's supposed to be something that is 1 or 2 centuries ago. And yet here it is coming back. Maduro has pleaded not guilty in Manhattan federal court. He does face charges of narco-terrorism, which really, frankly, is something you could trump up against any leader. I mean, in any country in the world, somebody somewhere is making some drugs, and somebody somewhere could smuggle them into the United States, and somebody in the United States could sell it to somebody, and somebody could OD. So really, you could use that as a pretext for getting rid of absolutely any leader in the world you don't like. Now, the condemnation at the international level, it's not overwhelmingly loud, but it's pretty consistent. The United Nations Rights Office says this clearly it violates international law, makes the world less safe. And of course, Trump, Rubio, Hegseth, and others are essentially saying, no such thing as international law. We're the big, strong, macho guys. We get to do whatever we want. And at the moment, it is true. They are getting to do whatever they want. The UN is worried that this is really sending a message that we're kind of going back to where things were more than 100 years ago, where powerful countries just get to do whatever they want. And what happens when that situation occurs? Well, it means there's war constantly all the time. Now, the Trump team to sort of oversee things in this country, Rubio, Hegseth, Miller, J.D. Vance, big brain trust there. Rubio says block sanctioned oil tankers until the industry opens to investment. Trump, again, is saying that he personally is in charge. Okay, so let's step back a minute and look at what's really going on here. The United Nations Charter has a ban on force, Article 2, Section 4. Using military to remove a government hits the core prohibition on force against a state's territorial integrity or political independence. Why would the United Nations do that? Let's step back even further. We live in a world where nothing's more fashionable than bashing the United Nations. Oh, a bunch of bureaucrats who sit around and don't pay their parking tickets and waste money. You know what waste money? All the constant war the world faced before the United Nations started, because human beings were constantly at war. War was the normal state. After the founding of the United Nations, guess what? No world wars. Yes, there were skirmishes. Yes, there were some wars, but the number of deaths per year from wars went from millions, hundreds of thousands a year, to the tens of thousands a year. There were no declared wars between the countries that founded the United Nations. I understand there were proxy wars, but it was wildly successful. Now, if you are a YouTuber, a pundit, a commentator, the easiest way to get clicks, frankly, is to denounce the United Nations as the worst, evil, most corrupt, incompetent organization ever. Only problem is it's not true. That's just demagoguery. Now, I realize I'm not going to get millions of views on this video because I don't play it safe and politically correct and just bash the United Nations. But in fact, we've all prospered under this order. The reason the United States is the richest country in the world, the reason we have thousands, tens of thousands of people who want to cross our borders every day is because the United States helped create a world that was more or less safe after 1945, so that human beings could focus their energies on creating products and services and selling them all over the world so everyone could get richer. Nobody got richer than United States citizens. Nobody benefited more from this order than United States citizens. And now we have a United States president taking these agreements that have worked really well and he's just ripping them up and shredding it, ostensibly to help American interest. It's absolutely an absurdity. Okay, other problems with this. There was no United Nations Security Council authorization. Again, the United States said they wanted this. The United States said, we want a United Nations. We want a UN Security Council to authorize action. It didn't happen. There is a standard lawful path for regime change scale action. And if one country can just say, well, we don't care, we'll do whatever we want, then the whole thing collapses. There is a self-defense exception, Article 51, doesn't obviously fit here. Article 51 generally requires an armed attack or a tightly argued imminent attack theory. He's indicted is not the same thing as we were attacked. There was no attack from Venezuela on the United States. The fact that they were, like many, many, many other nations, manufacture, grow, and sell drugs, doesn't make an attack. And if Americans would just stop buying them, they wouldn't even get in the country. So it was obviously contemptuously in violation of Article 51. Now, a law enforcement rationale doesn't legalize invasion-style capture. International extradition is normally done by a treaties cooperation, not unilateral raids. The UN Rights Office framed this as unlawful. This sets a precedent. It really does. It says might makes right. Well, today the United States is the strongest military, certainly in our hemisphere, arguably the world. Question: what happens if China suddenly develops smarter artificial intelligence and they can disable our nuclear weapons, or their drones are so superior it could zoom in and take out all of our defenses? If might makes right, then you better start practicing your Mandarin, okay? Because we will have consented to being taken over by the Chinese. If the only thing that matters is if I'm strong, I can do it, which is certainly the rhetoric coming from the Pete Hegseths of the world and Trump. We're strong, we can do whatever we want. Human rights justification is explicitly criticized. UN commentary and coverage warns against using human rights as a pretext for military intervention. The idea that Donald Trump cared about the poor people of Venezuela and them suffering in misery from Maduro, and he was an awful dictator. No one's saying Maduro is great and he was some popular. This isn't like someone saying, okay, here you've got a nice, popularly elected person, a legit, Corazon Aquino, and we're just taking her out because we don't like her. No one's suggesting that this is some legitimate, popularly elected Democrat, little d, leader, and therefore it's wrong. No, you can hold two contradictory ideas in your head at the same time. You can think Maduro is an awful, awful, evil dictator, and also think it's a horrible, horrific, dumb idea for the United States to go around kidnapping every leader we don't like of other countries. I realize some people have trouble holding two ideas in their head at the same time, but it is essential. I mean, typically that's what you want in a leader, someone who can engage in complex thought. Okay, so that's the international law perspective, but there's also a little nicety known as the U.S. Constitution and U.S. law. There's the war powers, Congress's Article 1 authority problem, a cross-border raid and ongoing occupation like nursing role looks like hostilities that normally require congressional authorization. There's the issue of war powers reporting clock. War powers typically requires notifying Congress within 48 hours when forces are introduced into hostile or imminent hostilities. There's the war powers time limit. Absent authorization, forces generally can't remain beyond 60 days, making foreseeable future politically and legally dubious. The I'm in charge thing that Trump is saying, it concentrates responsibility and liability. There's the due process optics versus foreign sovereignty. Even if U.S. courts can try Maduro, how he's brought in, raid versus extradition, becomes the core controversy internationally and domestically. Now, I've seen some commentators earlier this morning who have got a fascinating twist on this, saying anyone who runs for the Democratic nomination for president in 2028 needs to commit to honoring the extradition request of any other country who wants to try Donald Trump for crimes in their country. It made me laugh when I saw it. There's probably all sorts of difficulties in that actually happening, but I think it's a compelling political message. I certainly hope that Democratic candidates give that some serious thought. So here's the problem why this is so risky. It's likely to trigger more wars. If we can attack anybody just because we want to, then Venezuela or proxies may strike U.S. assets. Let's not forget, Venezuela was very tight with Putin, with Russia, with China. And they think that, we think Venezuela, the leadership wasn't just. Who's to say Russia says our controlling of Guam or Hawaii isn't just? Are we willing to start a war over this? It could be. Look, there's the issue of proxy escalation. Rivals can fund and arm insurgent responses cheaply. Regional backlash. Latin America has deep anti-intervention memory. And a lot of people in South America, frankly, who hate the United States. Yankee, go home. That expression lives on in the memories of many people for good reason. The United States has a history of meddling, some cases out and out toppling popularly elected leaders in South America to protect various fruit company interests and other U.S. business interests. And people don't like that. People hate it. There's the occupation trap. Now, Trump says he doesn't want to make this like Afghanistan. Nobody wants something to be 20 years like Afghanistan at the beginning, but somehow these things just grow. Nursing back to health, his stated goal, implies an open-ended presence. There's the energy geopolitics of this. Blockades, oil leverage can expand the battlefield because China really, really needs Venezuelan oil. I mean, the United States is fortunate these days. We are a net surplus producer of oil and energy. We don't even need Venezuelan oil. China does. And if the blockade really shuts this country down for a long time, China may have something to say about it. Okay, it's destroying the whole concept of the United Nations. And again, I realize it's very popular to say, oh, the United Nations is awful. You know what else is awful? World War I, World War II, a lot of other big world wars. And the United Nations, again, nobody wants to give them credit for it. It's not politically correct. I guess it's woke to say that the United Nations has ever done anything good. But in fact, it's been a pretty good 80 years with the world order, with the United States playing a key leadership role in saying big countries, strong countries can't simply gobble up smaller countries. That's why we're all so much richer today. That's why when you're looking at a chart of gross domestic product or per person income over the last 2,000 years, it's basically a complete flat line until the Industrial Revolution. It goes up a lot, but it really soars 1945. Why is that? It's because apparently human beings are more productive if they can make stuff than if they're going to war. And that is because of the United States and the whole concept of international law, the whole concept of might doesn't make right. And now we're seeing a repudiation of that principle. So again, other reasons why this is just horrible. It normalizes the concept of regime change by rating it. Others are going to copy it. I can tell you, nobody's talking about this more than the Chinese right now. A lot of them saying, wow, if he can do that to Venezuela because it's in his hemisphere and close to him and one of his neighbors, isn't Taiwan here? That's the only thing anyone's talking about in China right now. Actions have consequences. This converts a criminal indictment into a military doctrine. That's not a good idea. It could lead to endless commitment, as these things often do. It makes elections seem less likely. Now, let's not forget, according to most international observers, there is the Nobel Prize winner this year, Nobel Peace Prize winner this year, is by all accounts the most legitimate leader to run this country. But Trump doesn't like her because she criticized him once occasionally. So he's not trying to institute democracy here. I mean, there was a time when the United States did try to do that. I mean, certainly that was a part of the Bush mantra. It didn't work out so well. Really, both Bushes, they talked a good game about trying to spread democracy. Trump doesn't really care about democracy, and he's not even giving lip service to it. So one of the problems of this whole series of actions is it makes elections less likely to happen. It's having us pick winners in Venezuela. Okay, whether you want to call that communism, authoritarianism, dictatorship, fascism, it's not what democratic countries are supposed to be doing. This creates a situation for civil unrest and more distrust. It puts U.S. troops and diplomats in a blast radius for retaliation. I hope nothing happens bad, but it's certainly making them more vulnerable. This is putting in the hands of all of our enemies a propaganda windfall. I mean, they're saying, look at U.S. imperialism. Look at how bad these Yankees are we've been telling you about for so many decades, for the last 100 years, the last 150 years. This conforms to every nasty negative stereotype about America. It destabilizes energy markets with these blockade threats. It's also dramatically going to increase pressure on our borders. Because guess what happens when an entire country's economy tanks? When all of a sudden there's no money and there's no food and everything collapses, people just start running for the borders. And they are going to flee Venezuela. Some of them, perhaps hundreds of thousands, are going to flee for the Mexican border, Mexican-U.S. border. So are we just going to start shooting 10,000 fleeing Venezuelans a day? And we are the main reason they're having to flee their country? Is that really what the United States is going to be? It's just, frankly, absurd. Okay, let's dive a little deeper here and look at some of the rationale a little more closely. We are told by Trump, at least one of his many, many reasons as to why we are taking this guy out, because he didn't respect the elections. He took over when Hugo Chavez was out or was no longer there, passed away. He took over. Okay. Apparently he maybe won one election, but the last time he clearly cheated. All international observers say he cheated, he did not win, and he stayed in office. Well, the one thing we know about Trump is he kind of likes the idea of an incumbent saying, heads I win, tails you lose. So we know he doesn't really have a problem, but let's play along, because he has stated numerous times that we had to get this guy out because he had no legitimacy. He simply took control of the country. Okay, if that's the new standard, why stop there? If you're only a legitimate leader, if you have the will of the people behind you and they voted for you, and if not, we should just remove you and give the power back to the people and maybe take some oil or whatever natural resources are left in the country for ourselves. If that's the standard, okay, what about Saudi Arabia? No elections there. The king inherits power. Plus, I hear they've got a few drops of oil over there too. So if it's good enough to take out the leader of Venezuela because he didn't have democratic legitimacy, why not Saudi Arabia? Because they got a lot of oil too. Nobody ever voted for one of those kings, so let's put that on the list. United Arab Emirates, bunch of rulers selected by royal families. There's no popular vote there. Why don't we take them out? Qatar, same thing, no elections there. They got tons of natural gas. Wouldn't that be nice to put into the Trump portfolio? I mean the U.S. taxpayer portfolio. Oman, Brunei. There are a number of countries that are absolute monarchies. And again, if that's the problem with Venezuela, that the leader there, Maduro, didn't have democratic legitimacy, why don't we take out all the other monarchies in the world? Okay, next, let's move on to theocracies. Again, if we're so concerned for the poor Venezuelan people not having their vote count, why don't we go to Iran? They have a supreme leader, unelected. Why don't we take over North Korea? I realize there's a pen pal love relationship between Trump and their leader in North Korea, but the elections are performative. They're not a real thing. Why don't we take out North Korea? Syria. Why don't we just take over Syria? Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan. None of these countries have what we would call real elections and authorities with real legitimacy. Okay. Again, if our rule is we can remove someone like Maduro from Venezuela because he wasn't popularly elected, let's go big. Let's go bigly. Let's take over China because there are no real elections in China. The Communist Party gets to decide. So there's plenty of states, countries, where they have leadership and it's not what we would consider legitimate leadership as voted on in a democracy. It's some kind of military or one-party state. Vietnam, I was just there, great country, but I didn't see candidates out campaigning anywhere. Laos, Cuba. I'm sure Marco Rubio, who has ancestors from Cuba, has a particularly concern there, and that is one they're actually talking about. Why not take over Cuba? I mean, it worked so well with the Bay of Pigs before. Why not just take out the leadership? If our criteria is you don't get to stay a leader of a country unless you have popular support. Okay, now if we're really going to say we care about democracy and therefore majority rule, there are a whole host of other countries where the majority doesn't really necessarily get to pick the leader. India, for example. Modi's party, the Prime Minister of India, only got about 37% of the vote in one of the more recent elections. So that's not a majority. So why don't we take out Modi? United Kingdom. I mean, the prime ministers often are able to reach power by getting 35 to 45% of the vote. Oh yeah, there's one other big country where a leader can take power and not have a majority and actually have fewer votes than another candidate. What's the name of that country? What is that? It'll come to me in just a second. Oh yeah, it's called the United States of America. So if we apply Trump's logic to Maduro and get in a time machine and go back to 2017, China or some other forceful country could just come in, kidnap Trump and say, oh, you didn't get as many votes as Hillary. You're illegitimate. And plus, there are people in the United States who make drugs, and maybe we'll just define it as Facebook, which is a drug, and you're the head of a drug cartel. So Donald Trump, we're removing you from office and we're installing Hillary Clinton. Sounds crazy, but that is the logical result. Or that's what happens when you apply the same logic that the United States just did more broadly and consistently. Okay, there are other countries where they have elections, but everybody knows they cheat. Russia being one of them. Nobody really thinks that there are fair and honest elections there. Cameroon, Uganda, Belarus, all countries where the presidents are seen as fairly illegitimate. So if we're going to apply the Donroe doctrine of might makes right, and we should just take out anybody if we feel like they're not sufficiently democratic or legitimate, that's about 26 countries I've listed there already. So I hope you're doing your sit-ups and push-ups now, because there's going to have to be some big-time draft coming on to put enough bodies in the military if we're going to go and fight wars with 26 different nations. And of course, any one of those could have a domino effect and we could be in World War III. So friend, this is serious business. And yeah, I guess it accomplished one thing. No one's talking about the Epstein files today. So congratulations, Donald Trump. Perhaps that's the real meaning of the Donroe doctrine. Do crazy stuff that could destroy the world, but gets people to stop talking about the Epstein files. Perhaps that's it. But I got to tell you, this does show there are things more serious than the Epstein file. I mean, let's assume the worst case scenario, and I have no evidence. Let's assume there are 1,000 videos and pictures of Trump doing illegalities with minors. Again, I'm not suggesting there, but let's assume for a moment that's the case. Horrific, but frankly, nothing compared to World War III. And that's what we are setting ourselves up for. So I would ask, I'm here as a sane, sensible centrist. Obviously, if you are a progressive, a liberal, a Democrat, a left of center person, this is wildly offensive for numerous reasons. But if you are a conservative, if you are a libertarian, there's various branches. There's one branch of conservatism that says, truly America first. Let's focus on our own country. Let's withdraw from the world. From Lindbergh on down, that's been a part of the America First agenda. More isolationist. We've certainly seen that part of the Republican Party get very upset with Trump's involvement in the Middle East and certain bombings there. So that's a long-time active component of conservatism. There's another aspect of conservatism that says when you use power, do it in a measured way where there are clear-cut advantages to the United States, and you don't set yourself up for unintended consequences, and you don't set yourself up as the policeman of the world. Every conservative I know of believes that. And yes, there are conservatives who say, look, we are in a worldwide crisis where, whether it's communism in the past or radical Islamist extremists currently, who are definitely trying to assault American values. But that's not what's going on here in Venezuela. Nobody really thinks Maduro is Muslim. In fact, he actually has a lot of beliefs regarding religion, abortion, same-sex marriage, etc., that align with conservatives in the United States. So he's not trying to export communism to the United States. He's not trying to launch Islamist jihads against the United States. So I would argue if you are a principled conservative, a principled libertarian, a principled neoconservative for that matter, you should rightfully be condemning these actions that have taken place by Trump in the last few days. And for that matter, let's just assume for a moment you're incredibly greedy and you just like money. Nothing wrong with that. We have a system that has allowed American companies to make more money than any other country in the world. Why do we want to upset a whole system of global trade to go back to the days when we can only sell to ourselves and people we keep under our control? It's absolute insanity, regardless of where you are in the political spectrum. Center, left, right, libertarian, Marxist. This is a big, big problem. What's the secret to getting rich and staying rich? Well, apparently, it's not as simple as making a lot of money. Mickey Rourke, the famed actor in the news for having a GoFundMe set up by his manager and friends to raise $100,000 for his rent. Apparently, he hadn't paid his rent in a long time. He was living in an apartment that had no electricity, falling apart, and he is absolutely destitute. Now, let's look at some of the numbers here. Rourke was one of the top actors in Hollywood for a long time. He had lead roles in 25 films, supporting roles in at least 13, ensemble members in at least 8 films. When you add it all up, the movies he appeared in grossed nearly $2 billion. Now, that wasn't all his money, obviously, but conservative estimates would suggest he has made $10 million, likely a couple of tens of millions of dollars over his lifetime, and he has absolutely has no car, there's no credit card, no bank account, and until his friends raised some money for him to stick him in a new apartment, apparently he didn't really have a home. So what's the message here? It doesn't matter how much money you make. If you spend more than you have, it sounds obvious, it sounds trite, but it's true. You will end up with nothing. You'll end up like Mickey Rourke. Now, sometimes, let's be fair here, what makes someone a great actor, and in his time, he had some doozies. And I still love him from the role The Wrestler, which was a great movie, which came out in 2008. I'd recommend you check it out. Others, their favorite of his might be 9.5 Weeks. But regardless of what you think of his acting, he essentially had a successful media business. He partnered with other media companies, and he personally grossed 10 million or tens of millions of dollars, and he frittered it all away. Why? Apparently, he just spent it the second he got it. And that's human nature. A lot of people do that, but not to this extent. So regardless of whether you are a part of movies that generate $2 billion a year, or you are a farmer and your total cash crops generate $20,000 a year, the key to financial success is you have to save some money. You cannot spend more than you have. I realize that sounds obvious, but so many people seem to think, oh, if I just strike it lucky, if I just get the cryptocurrency in the right time, buy my Bitcoin at the right place, place the right bet in Kalshi. Well, no, doesn't matter. If your attitude is gamble again, give here, spend it up, snort it up, whatever it is, you too could end up like Mickey. I could, if I want to just spend money on every possible thing that looks fun or looks interesting or tastes good or feels good. You can spend every single penny you have, even if it's tens of millions of dollars. Now, as I was saying, to be fair, a lot of what makes an actor great is they're simply more emotional than normal human beings. They get paid to be really emotional. Well, the very same thing that can make you a successful actor can also really get you in trouble in so-called real life. If all you do is act on emotions, then why not give a friend of a friend $100,000 to start a restaurant? You feel really good about it. You want to help. Why not continue to buy more drugs or to buy more bottle service at the nightclub when all the fawning fans are all over you? It's easy to have that money fritter away. The other thing about Rourke is this passion for boxing. He fancied himself a professional boxer. So you've obviously heard me and others talk about Jake Paul. And there's kind of a long tradition of people who are successful in one thing and they come up with a brilliant idea. I know, because I'm good at one thing, like being a YouTuber or a movie star. I'm going to be good at something else completely unrelated. I'm going to be great at boxing. Well, the problem is very few people are really good at boxing. And even the ones who are really good at boxing, it turns out getting your skull bashed in repeatedly again and again and again does real brain damage. And if your brain is damaged, it's kind of hard to remember. What did I do with my wallet? Who did I loan my credit card to? How many different warehouses am I storing old furniture in where I'm spending $3,000 a month in storage fees, which is apparently a real thing that actually happened to Mickey Rourke. So, two big lessons here. And forgive me, this is not the most profound video I've ever made. Don't take up boxing just because you're already a successful middle-aged actor or a late 20s YouTuber. But I would argue, if you really care about your brain and living a long, healthy life, don't take up boxing at all. Forgive me if that's your dream to win the Golden Gloves or to go to the Olympics in boxing. But the long-term process, I mean, we don't see a 90-year-old Muhammad Ali walking around today. And I think getting bashed in the skull repeatedly, even though he hit a lot more than he got hit, is one of those reasons. So don't take up boxing, number one. Number two, learn financial discipline. You can make minimum wage your whole life if you consistently save 15% of it, invest it in an S&P 500 index fund throughout your whole life. You could end up a millionaire. On the other hand, you can make $5 million a year and end up on the street or near homeless, like Mickey Rourke, if you spend $6 million a year. According to the Washington Post, a nationwide backlash is forming against AI data centers as rural and suburban communities rebel against projects they say threaten land, water, energy prices specifically, and local democracy. From deep red Oklahoma to progressive Arizona, voters across the political spectrum are blocking or delaying data centers they see as secretive, resource-hungry, and imposed by powerful tech companies. What began as a zoning dispute is rapidly becoming a bipartisan political revolt with real electrical consequences. Okay, so these data centers, at first blush, it seemed like, oh, wow, if I'm a politician, I'm a member of Congress, I'm a mayor, I want these. New jobs, construction, boost to our economy. Sounds great, right? The problem is, once you've built the structure, there's need for very few human beings. It creates almost no new jobs for a community. But what it does do is create such a demand for electricity that it's basically sucking all the electricity out of the community, so everyone else's prices go up. So you get no benefit if you're an average citizen, but your electricity bill goes up dramatically. Some of these data centers, here's some quick facts. Some of these data centers consume more electricity than entire cities. They're often about 900 acres big, and it's all got to be zoned for these data centers. And that's the size of Central Park, which is huge, absolutely gigantic. And people are getting upset about them. Governor Whitmer of Michigan was quoted, I think it was in her Christmas card, somewhat facetiously, "All I want for Christmas is for there to be no new data centers in my state," because the backlash is growing. Now, we're used to living in a world where big tech leaders, the Googles of the world, the Elon Musk of the world, they get whatever they want because politicians rely to pressure. There's negative pressure, there's positive pressure. And if you give a politician, I don't know, $250 million, the way Elon Musk gave to Donald Trump, they tend to jump when you ask them to jump. And if you're a local member of Congress and you get a $50,000 campaign contribution, that's enough to make you jump pretty high too. So we're not used to living in a world where big tech companies have anyone say no to them. And yet more and more we're seeing citizen opposition around the country. Kyle Schmidt told the Washington Post, "It feels like these data center companies have just put a big target on our backs." According to Chris Wright, U.S. Energy Secretary, in rural America right now where data centers are being built, everyone's already angry. And again, also as quoted by the Washington Post, Mitch Jones of Food and Water Watch says it's drawing people together from disparate backgrounds who might not agree otherwise. So there are a lot of different reasons to dislike these data centers. And let me not be a hypocrite. I use a lot of data. I use ChatGPT every day. I use Google every day. I use other applications with artificial intelligence. Chances are you do too. So this is a complicated issue. The question, though, is who's going to pay? We live in a time where the top executives of big tech companies are no longer getting paid nice wages 40 times bigger than the average line worker. They're not being paid millions. They're not being paid tens of millions. They're being paid billions of dollars. So maybe it's time to redistribute some of the actual cost so that all the benefits don't go to a handful of top executives and investors, but the costs are spread out more equally and some of the benefits shared as well. Now, this is the problem with sort of all this trickle-down economics. Well, the big tech companies get rich. Some of that will sprinkle down on us. It's not really working out that way. These things use a lot of water. They use a lot of energy, and it's simply not benefiting communities. And when it's in the planning stage, maybe everything seems great, but if it's a year or two in and you notice your electricity bill was $75 and now it's $150 and your total yearly income is $36,000, all of a sudden you may have to say, maybe I don't have any electricity or heat for the month of December. I'm out of money. That gets people angry, rightfully so. Now, you don't have to be anti-tech to think that there's a problem with how big these data centers are. I'm not anti-technology. I use it every day. I talk about it every day. I make my living using technology. But there's got to be some political changes to how we deal with these issues with respect to the water cost, the energy cost. So I want to share with you a handful of proposals that are not widely adopted yet, but could be. One is to have a separate large load tariff class. You could create a new customer class for hyperscale users, those greater than 50 megawatt. They pay rates reflecting the full marginal cost of serving them. That would include generation, transmission, distribution, balancing, and reliability. You could make cost causation explicit. You could require utilities to prove in filings that no costs are shifted to other rate classes, meaning residential and small businesses. If they can't prove it, contracts get rejected or repriced. You can have upfront grid upgrade payments. Require data centers to pay contributions in aid of construction for substations, feeders, transmission upgrades before the project goes live. You could demand charges that bite. Use high demand charges, especially peak coincidence, so that customers paying for the strain is the one causing it. You could require a minimum monthly bill, take or pay. Require a minimum bill tied to reserved capacity so a data center can't reserve huge power, then underuse it, leaving everyone else with stranded cost. You could have stranded cost early exit fees. If the facility shuts down or cuts usage early, it pays an exit fee covering the remaining undepreciated grid investment. Fuel and price volatility riders assigned to the project. If new gas peakers or long-term contracts are built to serve the load, attach these costs to the data center through a project-specific rider, not to general rates. Time of use and critical peak pricing. Charge much more during grid stress hours. This pushes operators to shift compute, storage, and cooling schedules. On-site generation requirements with guardrails. Require bring your own power or contract for firm clean generation plus penalties if promised self-supply doesn't materialize. Public transparency rules for special contracts. You could ban or severely limit redactions in large load power contracts. Non-disclosure agreements shouldn't hide the numbers that determine whether families get stuck with the bill. The bottom line, folks, is these are political decisions that are being made on your behalf. And while there is sometimes demagoguery about how, the elites of both parties are screwing over every average American, it's awful and awful, this is one case where it's pretty much true. If a big data company comes in and gets to pay kind of the same rate for electricity everyone else does, they benefit, and all the other regular taxpayers, community members, can see their electric bills skyrocket and they get no tangible benefit. This is because of an existing political arrangement. And it does have a political solution. But voters are going to have to speak up. They're going to have to get angry, or they're going to have to mobilize. They're going to have to start running specifically on the platform and supporting politicians on the platform of data centers want to come here, fine, but they are going to make us whole. They are going to either create a net surplus value for our community and people's average bottom line pocketbooks, or they can't come. It's either going to help us make money, or at least it will be neutral, and we, the average consumer, are not going to be stuck with the bill. Happy anniversary! It's the 5th anniversary of January 6th, which many people are forgetting about, but is one of the darkest days in the history of the United States and democracy itself. New York Times did a great comprehensive editorial on this. I want to share with you some of their analysis because it does need to be repeated. It should never be forgotten what happened to this country. It was a deliberate assault on American democracy that reshaped politics by proving that lawlessness could go unpunished and in fact would be rewarded. 5 years later, the failure to hold leaders accountable has normalized political violence. It has rewarded lies and weakened the constitutional order. The damage didn't end that day. It became a governing strategy. I want to go over 30. There are hundreds, if not thousands of them, but I want to go over 30 specific facts that I really want you to remember anytime somebody mentions January 6th, because there are attempts to rewrite history going on every day. Number one, January 6th was the first violent transfer blocking attempt in U.S. history. It's the first time there was violence trying to have a transfer of power. Horrible and disgusting. Number two, a sitting president encouraged overturning a certified election result. Yes, he encouraged it again and again and again for a couple of months. Everyone likes to forget that. Number three, there were over 2,000 rioters who breached the U.S. Capitol. Number four, Congress was forced to flee while certifying votes for the properly democratically elected president. Number five, the peaceful transfer of power was violently interrupted. This is what we think of with so-called third world countries, not the United States. Number six, rioters openly threatened to hang the vice president of the United States, Mike Pence. Number seven, lawmakers had to hide. They were barricaded in the Capitol. They feared execution. It was a terrifying time. Number eight, police officers were beaten with batons and shields. Number nine, and everyone forgets this, Officer Brian Sicknick died after being assaulted. Now, it happened the next calendar day. So a lot of apologists for Trump like, nobody died that day. they're equivalent. First of all, one of the protesters did in fact die, and a police officer did die the next day from assault that happened on January 6th. So it's always a bit rich to hear people talk about how much they love the men in blue, how much they love the police, how awful the so-called centrist and liberals and Democrats and progressives are because they don't really love police. And here we have Officer Brian Sicknick, who was attacked brutally on January 6th, and because of those injuries died the next day. Somehow that's okay because it was about supporting Trump. 4 officers who were attacked that day later died by suicide shortly thereafter. Now you can say, well, they must have had other problems. Maybe, but apparently being attacked violently by citizens in your own country, apparently that does something to your psyche. And for 4 of them, it made them want to kill themselves. Shameful and despicable. Number 11, the attack targeted the constitutional process itself. You cannot claim to love America's Constitution and then see an attack on the Constitution like this, where the proper procedures of installing the next president are followed, and people just attack that. I mean, that is attacking our constitutional system. Number 12, Trump promoted election lies for weeks and weeks and weeks beforehand. This idea that he had 1 or 2 quotes or texts not urging violence that day, that lets him off the hook. Well, no, he fomented this. As the independent prosecutor Jack Smith pointed out, there would be no January 6th without Trump. If he hadn't been spreading lies and spreading lies and spreading lies, and make no mistake about it, it was a lie. He lost the election fairly and squarely. There was no election fraud that changed the results. Every single independent observer, regardless of what political party they're in, has come to the same conclusion. So that's number 12. Number 13, the courts, many of whom had Trump appointees running them, the courts rejected these fraud claims dozens of times. Number 14, Trump pressured state officials to find votes, most famously with the Secretary of State of Georgia, essentially ordering the Republican official there to find me another 11,000 votes. Folks, that's stealing an election. That's fraud. That's felonious activity. And yet so many people want to act like, oh, it was just a peaceful protest that day. That's not what it was about. Number 15, Trump pressured the vice president to violate the Constitution. Let's not forget, he was ordering Mike Pence to violate the Constitution and to just proclaim that Trump was the winner. Why bother going through the charade of even having an election if you're just going to order your henchmen to proclaim you the winner? Number 16, Trump told supporters to fight like hell. Okay, they heard him. They listened to him. Many of them respected him, and they did exactly what he asked for. They did fight like hell. And that's why a police officer is dead. That's why one of the protesters got dead. That's why there was massive destruction to our U.S. Capitol. Number 17, Trump delayed action for nearly 3 hours. He could have stopped it. He could have called off the goons. Even right-wing hacks like Sean Hannity of Fox News were secretly texting him, saying, hey, Mr. President, you got to call this off. You got to stop this. This looks bad. When even Sean Hannity is telling you you've gone too far, you've gone too far. Okay. Number 18, violence continued while Trump watched on television. Of course, he was too chicken to go down there, but he was enjoying watching it on TV, apparently, and did nothing. 21, Trump later praised rioters as patriots. That's not how it's supposed to work in America. You're a rioter, you're an insurrectionist, you're guilty of assault and battery, you're guilty of committing felonies. You don't earn the right to be called a patriot. Now, the rioters were reframed as hostages. No, they weren't. Number 23, hundreds convicted of assault were later pardoned. One of the most despicable acts any president has ever committed. And believe me, this president's committed many of them. Number 24, leaders who defended democracy were purged politically. That's right. If you were a Republican especially, and you actually said, hey, I think democracy is more important than any one party getting what it wants in any one election, you were attacked by Trump and you were purged. Number 25, accountability through impeachment narrowly failed. There were a lot of Republicans who wanted to vote for impeachment. They told Mitt Romney, the Republican, hey, I'd like to be like you, Mitt, and vote for impeachment, but I can't afford private security guards, and Trump's henchmen will attack me, perhaps kill me, and surround my home and family and kids, so I am not going to vote to impeach him. That is the stuff of third world dictatorships, tyrannical regimes. That's not supposed to be what America is about. Number 26, Senate leaders chose party over country. Mitch McConnell, who by all accounts hates and detests Donald Trump, just said, okay, I'm gonna help the Republican Party. We're not gonna impeach him, and let's just hope he goes away. Well, Mitch, how did that work out? Number 27, the rule of law was replaced with loyalty test. Utterly shameful. Number 28, political violence became a viable tactic. Trump uses it all the time. Don't listen to me. Listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she opposed Trump because she wanted the Epstein files released. She was overwhelmed with, at last count, more than 60 death threats. Again, this is from a conservative MAGA Trump supporter, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Number 29, history was deliberately rewritten for power. Number 30, the most important point, January 6th proved democracy can collapse from within. And that is the real legacy of January 6th. Folks, that's the show for today. I'm TJ Walker. This is Filtered. Thanks so much for joining me. We're going to have a great 2026 together. I'm looking forward to it. There's going to be a lot of exciting news stories where you and I can chew on these, dissect them, analyze them, and filter them through the lens of communication skills, personal development skills, and ultimately truth. Thanks so much. Please like this show, subscribe to it, whether you're watching on any social media platform or any podcast, and please leave a review. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow.